The chamber of the Galactic Concord was designed to humble anyone who entered it. Vast arches of polished alloy curved overhead, glimmering like frozen lightning. Rows of floating platforms spiraled upward around a hollow center, each cradling representatives of different species. In the center stood a raised dais, where the petitioners came to plead their case before the most powerful coalition in known space. On that dais now stood the Threxian envoy. The being's skin shimmered like translucent pearl, veins faintly visible beneath the surface. Its body was delicate, skeletal compared to the armored giants seated above. When it spoke, its translator shaped the words into soft, trembling tones. "My people beg for protection," it said, for slender hands clasped tight to its chest. "The Verothi warships blot out our skies. Already they burn our villages, enslave our kin. We have no armies. We have no weapons. If the Concord does not act, we will be erased." The plea echoed through the chamber. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then, one by one, the representatives deactivated their translators. Lights blinked out across the tiers as voices fell silent. Averted eyes, indifferent faces, polished scales and plated hides, all turning away. From the human delegation's platform, Captain Elara Voss felt her stomach knot. 34 years old, commander of the frigate Resolute, she had seen war before. She had been a refugee once, a child scrambling through smoke as distant powers debated her people's strategic value. She knew the look on the Threxian's face, the hollow terror of being written off as unimportant. The Concord's presiding counselor, a hulking Seriki with eyes like molten gold, leaned forward. "The Concord regrets your plight," he said, voice booming. "But the Threxian species is strategically insignificant. We cannot endanger the balance for one weak world." A murmur of agreement rolled through the chamber. Some spoke of treaties, others of resources, but all wrapped their excuses in cold diplomacy. The Threxian envoy's luminous eyes dimmed, its frame trembling as if the words themselves carried weight enough to break bones. A sharp crackle cut across the chamber, as a new transmission forced its way onto the central hollow. The towering form of High Warlord Kareth appeared, scaled, broad-shouldered, draped in the crimson banners of the Verothi Dominion. His voice was low and guttural, every syllable a challenge. "See how they abandon you," Kareth said, sneering down at the envoy. "The Concord hides behind words. The Threxians will kneel, and your artistry will decorate our halls as trophies. Resist, and your kind will vanish." Laughter, cold and humorless, echoed from the warlord's transmission before it vanished. The chamber filled again with silence, heavier this time, as if all oxygen had been stolen away. Elara rose from her seat. She wasn't supposed to. Military attaches observed, they didn't speak. Orders from Earth's delegation were clear: neutrality, patience, diplomacy. But looking at the Threxian envoy, small, alone, hopeless, she could not sit still. She stepped forward, her voice steady though her pulse thundered. "If the Concord will not act," she said, each word cutting through the chamber, "then humanity will." Heads turned. Alien eyes blinked, compound lenses flickered, sensory tendrils twitched. Murmurs surged through the tiers. Some incredulous, others amused. The Sereti counselor glared down. "Captain Voss, you have no authority to speak here." "Authority?" Elara shot back. "You have authority. What you lack is conscience. You've just condemned an entire people because defending them isn't convenient. Humanity remembers what it means to be abandoned. And we will not let it happen again." The envoy stared at her as if she were light breaking through storm clouds. Its hands trembled, and for the first time in the hearing, its eyes lifted with something more than despair. The counselor's voice sharpened. "If Earth intervenes, it will face sanctions. Your actions would not represent the Concord. You risk your species standing? Then so be it," Elara said. "Standing among cowards isn't worth much anyway." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in overlapping tongues. Some condemned her recklessness, others whispered of human arrogance. The Concord counselors demanded silence, but the noise only grew. Above it all, The Threxian envoy bowed its head, overwhelmed, not by shame this time, but by relief. A hand touched Alara's arm. It was her aide, Lieutenant Marin, eyes wide with panic. "Captain, think what you're saying," he hissed under his breath. "We'll be exiled from the Concorde. Our supply lines, our allies. Our allies just left a defenseless people to die." Alara whispered back. "If that's the cost of belonging, I want no part of it." The Concorde called for order, banging gavel-like strikes of amplified sound through the chamber. When quiet finally returned, the presiding counselor leaned forward once more. His voice was cold enough to freeze air. "Then humanity has chosen its path," he said. "Do so at your own peril. This council will not follow." One by one, platforms drifted away, disengaging from the central chamber. Alien faces vanished into shadow as the tiers emptied. Soon only the humans remained, and the trembling Threxian envoy on the dais. Alara descended to meet it. Up close, she saw how fragile the envoy was, skin nearly translucent, body swaying with exhaustion. Its voice came in a whisper, translated softly into her ear. "No one has ever stood for us. Why would your people risk themselves for ours?" Alara held the envoy's gaze. Memories surged, her mother's hand pulling her through burning ruins, the silence of abandoned worlds, the hollow indifference of powers too great to care. She let the fire of those memories harden into words. "Because we know what it means to be left behind," she said. "And because compassion isn't weakness. It's strength. That's what makes us human." For the first time, the envoy smiled, a faint, fragile thing, but real. As Alara turned back toward her delegation, she knew the path ahead was treacherous. She had defied orders, defied the Concorde, defied the very structure of galactic politics. Yet in her chest, the knot of rage and despair had unraveled into something steadier. Resolve. The Threxians would not stand alone. Not while she still drew breath. The human fleet emerged from slipstream above Tarathos, a scattering of steel amid the void. Captain Alara Vaz stood at the command dais of the Resolute, eyes fixed on the blue-green sphere below. Tarathos glowed with swaths of ocean and fertile plains, fragile and untouched. It looked more like a sanctuary than a battlefield. Yet war shadows already streaked across its skies, dark trails where the Veirathi invasion ships had descended. "Fleet status," Alara ordered. Lieutenant Marin's voice was clipped. 7 ships in formation. 3 frigates, 2 corvettes, 1 carrier, and the Resolute. That's it. Concorde allies, none. The last word stung. The galaxy had abandoned this world. Humanity alone stood between the Threxians and obliteration. Alara squared her shoulders. "Then we'll make it enough." The calm channel opened. The Threxian leader appeared, luminous skin flickering with straying. "Captain Voss," he said softly, "our people see your ships above us. They have not fled. For that, we give you our gratitude. But know this, we have no armies to join you. We are not built for war." Alara studied the being's thin frame, the way his hands trembled. "You don't need to fight," she said. "You just need to survive. Leave the war to us." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge silent. Every officer watched her, some with determination, others with doubt. She met each gaze. "Remember why we're here. This isn't about politics. It's about lives. Hold fast." Alarms shrieked. "Contacts!" Marin barked. "Veirathi ships inbound, 5 destroyers, 4 cruisers closing fast." The display filled with crimson icons, moving in predatory arcs. The Veirathi had come in force. Alara's fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. Perfect odds, she thought grimly. "Form shield wall around Tarathos," she ordered. "Corvettes, screen the carrier. Keep their fighters off us. All ships, prepare to engage." Space erupted. The first barrage came in a rain of plasma lances. Blue-white beams carved the void, slamming against the Resolute's shields. The ship shuddered, lights flickering. Alara gripped the rail until her knuckles whitened. Return fire! Her fleet answered with disciplined bursts. Human ships were smaller, but their targeting was precise. A corvette slipped between two cruisers, unleashing a volley of kinetic rounds that ripped through armor. One Verothi vessel spun out, venting fire. Cheers broke out on the bridge. Elara silenced them with a raised hand. One ship down doesn't win the battle. Stay sharp. The enemy pressed harder. Verothi destroyers surged forward like predators circling prey, their hulls bristling with weapons. Shields flared, metal tore, and space filled with wreckage. Human vessels darted and weaved, their agility their only defense. On the calm, Karitha's voice crackled through, deep, mocking. So, the apes have come to bleed for their pets. Noble, perhaps. Feudal, certainly. Do you truly think your scraps of metal can hold back the Dominion? Elara answered without hesitation. We don't need scraps. We just need heart. And you've never understood that. Laughter rolled across the channel before it cut out. Rage burned in her chest, but she forced it down into focus. Helm, bring us around. Target the lead destroyer. Concentrate fire. The Resolute speared forward, cannons thundering. Plasma streaks tore into enemy armor. Explosions rippled across the destroyer's hull until its core ignited, a brief star blooming in the darkness. The blast lit Taratho's skies. Yet victory carried a price. On the flank, one of her corvettes took a full barrage. The ship split apart in a blossom of fire, scattering debris across the void. 27 human lives gone in seconds. Elara's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stand tall. Every officer on the bridge looked to her. She couldn't falter. Maintain formation, she ordered, voice steady. We honor them by holding the line. Hours blurred into fire and wreckage. The battle dragged on, either side yielding. Humanity's fleet fought with feral precision, darting in and out of firing lines, striking where armor was weakest. The Verothi countered with overwhelming power, grinding forward despite losses. At last, the Dominion fleet pulled back, retreating to regroup. Silence returned to the void, broken only by the hiss of damaged systems and the whisper of exhausted breaths. On the Resolute's bridge, Elara leaned against the rail, her muscles aching with fatigue. Reports came in: casualties, damage, dwindling reserves. Too many losses already, and this was only the first wave. A soft chime signaled an incoming transmission. The Threxian leader's face appeared once more. His eyes glistened, and his voice trembled. You fought for us. Our children saw your ships in the sky and believed, for the first time, that hope still exists. You risked everything. Why? Elara hesitated. She thought of the corvette crew lost, of the exhaustion in her officers' eyes, of the Concorde's threats still echoing in her ears. But she also thought of the Threxian child she had glimpsed in the council chamber, clutching a carved token as if it could shield her from war. Because someone has to, she said simply. And if not us, then who? Silence stretched, then the Threxian leader bowed his head. Then know this, you will not stand alone. We have no warriors, but we have knowledge. The terrain of our world, the hidden valleys, the mineral fields, the ancient passages, we will give you every secret we know. Let that be our weapon. For the first time since the war began, Elara smiled. Then we fight together. When the transmission ended, she closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. The path ahead was clear. The Verothi would return in greater numbers, relentless until Tarathos bent or broke. Humanity's fleet could not hold forever. But with the Threxians beside them, with their resolve and their hope bound together, there was a chance. She opened her eyes, voice firm. Signal the fleet. Begin repairs, rearm the carrier. We don't have long. Marin nodded grimly. Captain, the Concorde sent another warning. If we keep fighting, Earth itself could be expelled. Elara met his gaze. Then Earth will stand apart. Better that than stand with those who abandoned their honor. The bridge crew absorbed her words in silence. Fear lingered, but behind it grew something stronger, a quiet pride, a shared defiance. They were alone in the galaxy, but not without purpose. Beyond the viewport, Tarathos turned slowly, its oceans gleaming, its lands scarred yet unbroken. The sight steeled her resolve. Whatever the cost, humanity would not let this world fall. The next battle was already coming. And Elara Vos was ready. The moon of Junar hung in the void like a scar. Once a fertile colony world, it had been ravaged by centuries of war until nothing remained but craters and wreckage. Now its blackened surface bristled with the Verathi flagship's anchor claws, vast metal arms driven deep into the rock. From this fortress, High Warlord Karith prepared his final strike on Tarathos. Aboard the Resolute, Captain Elara Vos studied the tactical display. Red icons filled the board, 2 carriers, a swarm of cruisers, and the warlord's massive dreadnought at the center. Her own fleet was barely a shadow by comparison, 3 surviving frigates, 1 battered corvette, the damaged carrier, and the Resolute. Against such force, victory by strength alone was impossible. Lieutenant Marin's voice was low, almost reverent. "That's not a fleet, Captain. That's an execution." Elara didn't flinch. "Then we'll rewrite the script." She opened a secure channel to the Threxian leadership. Their elder, frail but resolute, appeared on screen. "Captain Vos," he said, "you have given us courage. Our people cannot fight with weapons, but we know these skies better than any. There are fault lines beneath Junder's crust, hollow caverns formed by ancient wars. We can guide you through them, unseen." The offer sparked a plan. Not brute force, but guile. Elara felt the first flicker of hope. "Then that's our blade. We'll use the moon itself as our ally." Orders rippled across the fleet. The humans and Threxians began weaving their knowledge together, star maps overlaying geological charts, fleet maneuvers threaded through ancient tunnels. Every officer understood, this would be their final stand. Hours later, the battle began. The Verathi fleet surged forward, their ships cutting through the void with predatory precision. Karitha's voice thundered across the comms. "Humans! I admire your persistence, but pity your ignorance. This moon will be your grave." Elara's reply was calm steel. "You mistake resolve for ignorance, Karith. That's your weakness." The Resolute dove toward Junder's surface, its shields flaring under the first barrage. Enemy fire lit the skies, streaks of burning plasma carving the darkness. Human ships broke formation, luring Verathi cruisers into pursuit. Then, just as the enemy closed, the frigates vanished into fissures yawning across the moon's crust. The hunters had followed prey into a trap. Inside the tunnels, the void gave way to jagged stone walls glowing faintly with mineral veins. Piloting demanded absolute precision. One mistake meant annihilation. Yet the humans flew as if born to it, guided by Threxian coordinates. Explosions echoed through the caverns as ambushes detonated, mineral seams rigged to ignite, collapsing tunnels onto Verathi's ships. The Dominion cruisers faltered, their numbers thinned by the very world they sought to dominate. On the flagship bridge, Karith roared in fury. "Clever vermin! But the moon will not shield you forever." Back aboard the Resolute, Elara's crew sweated over consoles, their hands steady despite the storm. The tactical screen showed dwindling blue icons. Even with ambushes, the humans were bleeding ships. Victory required more than survival. It required breaking the warlord himself. "Bring us about," Elara commanded. "We target the dreadnought." Marin's eyes widened. "Captain, that's suicide." "Not suicide," she said. "Sacrifice. There's a difference." The Resolute burst from the tunnels, battered hull blazing with fire. Ahead loomed the Verathi flagship, a monstrous fortress bristling with weapons, its hull etched with the banners of 100 conquered worlds. Elara stared at it as if staring down the embodiment of arrogance itself. Karitha's face filled the comm screen, scaled features twisted in triumph. "You dare charge my throne? You will be dust before you touch me." Elara stood tall, voice unyielding. "Compassion makes us dangerous, Karith. You'll learn that the hard way." The Resolute drove forward, shields collapsing under relentless fire. Systems screamed, decks buckled, smoke choked the bridge. Elara's crew fought to keep the ship alive for one last strike. Closer and closer they came, until the dreadnought's guns filled every screen. "Ready ramming protocol," Elara ordered. Marin hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. "Aye, Captain." But before the fatal charge could complete, new signals lit the display. Small craft, unarmed freighters, transports, mining vessels, rushed from Terathos. Threxians, civilians turned fighters, hurling themselves into the fray. Their ships had no weapons, only courage. They struck the Verathi from all sides, colliding, blocking, forcing gaps in formation. For every vessel shattered, another surged forward. The Threxians had found their voice in defiance. The opening was enough. Elara seized it. "All power to engines! Hit them now!" The Resolute slammed into the dreadnought's flank. The impact tore through armor, breaching reactor conduits. Explosions ripped down the flagship's spine, fire spilling into the void. Caritha's image reappeared one final time, his roar more animal than words. Then the signal cut as his ship erupted in a cascade of flame. Silence fell. The Verathi fleet, leaderless and shattered, scattered into retreat. The void cleared, leaving only wreckage, burning debris, and the battered remnants of humanity's fleet. Against every law of probability, Terathos stood free. On the Resolute's bridge, alarms still wailed, smoke curled, and wounded officers groaned. Yet Elara remained upright, gripping the rail with bloodied hands. She forced her voice steady. "Damage report?" Marin, face streaked with soot, managed a weary grin. "We're alive, Captain!" "That's the report." A chime signaled incoming transmission. The Threxian elder appeared, eyes wet with emotion. "Captain Voss, you have saved not just our lives, but our future. Every star in our skies will remember the humans who would not abandon us." Elara let the words wash over her, exhaustion pressing heavy, but pride stronger still. She answered softly, "We stood because no one else would. That's what it means to be human." The screen faded. Around her, her crew slumped in relief, some laughing weakly, others silent with grief for the fallen. Outside the viewport, the scarred moon turned slowly, lit by the embers of battle. Beyond it, Terathos rose, scarred yet alive, its oceans glimmering in the dawnlight. Elara allowed herself a single deep breath. Humanity had risked everything, and against all odds, they had prevailed. The Concord would condemn them, the galaxy might shun them, but to the Threxians, and to every species who watched, one truth had been carved into history. Humans fight for those no one else will. And that, she knew, was their greatest strength.